You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello and welcome to another amazing episode of Business Wealth Impact. We have an amazing guest, Stacey Copas, who was dubbed the Queen of Resilience, and David Goggins calls her a badass. Left a quadriplegic and needing a wheelchair after a devastating accident when she was 12, she didn't let this tragic accident slow her down. Instead, she used her life experience and personal philosophies to work with organizations who want their people to be more engaged, resilient, and productive so they can grow through uncertainty and change. She's also the author of How to Be Resilient and the host of the Resilience Rocks Sales podcast. Welcome, Stacey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you today, and I'm really grateful for one of our mutual friends for introducing us. And the amazing world of connectivity across the world is at play today, and I'm really keen to explore it with you.
Right. And it's so awesome because we were chatting before and you live in the Blue Mountains in Sydney, and I was saying that I've been there many, many years ago. Okay, so let's dig in. You're a resilience expert. Okay, we're going to get into your life story in a minute. But people talk a lot about resilience now and grit and everything. What is your take on this?
Yeah, look, my take on resilience is probably a little bit different to most. And over the years, I've been working mainly in the business space around resilience. And what I'd found was, for the most part, I felt that resilience had become synonymous with coping. And to me, I feel that that really sells it short. And so for me, I see resilience as, how do we actually grow through challenges rather than just go through them? I see it as a proactive skill. I say, in my perspective, I see resilience as 75% proactive and then 25% reactive.
Mm.
So it's something that we can actually build our capacity for. There's a lot of talk around, whether it's something people have naturally or not. But to me, it's a skill that can be learned like any other skill. And the thing that I liken it most to is that, we go to the gym to build and maintain physical strength. And when we go to the gym, we do a series of quite simple movements, but we do them consistently, repetitively over time. And the compound effect of doing those then builds strength. And my approach to resilience is very similar. With very simple rituals and practices done consistently over time, then builds our capacity for resilience, which means that when we do find ourselves in situations where there's a disappointment, a setback, something hasn't gone to plan, then we actually have the ability to not get completely blindsided by it. We're able to actually then look at that and actually see it as an opportunity rather than an obstacle. So it's just it's a little bit different. I know a lot of people talking about, it's all about bouncing back. But again, I feel that sells it short because it implies that we just keep coming back to this same place. And I feel that my approach to resilience probably fits into, there's the school of thought around post-traumatic growth. And, that was something I come across many years after I started developing and working my own approaches to resilience. And I feel that that's the one that really sits probably most closely aligned to how I see and work with resilience.
No, because a lot of people, grit and resilience go together. And actually, I used to do talks on grit because I truly believe that in some ways the world is teaching people to be weak. I feel like there's a trend of training people towards weakness. And to me, it's not about like pushing through and burning out, but there is definitely, we need to be gritty. We need to be gritty and resilient. And there are two different things, they go together though. So a question about you, when you went through your accident, okay, and you became a quadriplegic, you were 12, right? So did you go through many years of feeling sorry for yourself? How did that roll out to get to the person you are now? That's what fascinates me.
Yeah, so absolutely. There were many, many years afterwards that I look at it back and I'm like, I was like, nothing to see here, getting on with life, pretty good at just that facade and not letting anybody else into what was going on. But for me, it was And I think being 12 and a 12-year-old girl, it's that time, it's such a crucial time where, you're starting to, figure out identity and where do you
Mm,
fit in and what do you want to do? And, you have, there's a lot of stuff, you boys are suddenly very interesting and all of that type of stuff too.
mm,
And prior to the accident, I was pretty gifted academically,
mm,
and all I wanted to do from the time I, started school was I wanted to be a vet, and I'd passed the entrance exams. I got a first round offer to go to a selective agricultural college, so
mm,
that was way on track, and I'd just done my orientation and stuff, and I was ready to sort of start there. I was the pitcher in the softball team in summer. I was the first girl to play soccer for my school. I was a rep runner every distance from the 100 meters right through to the cross country. So, having an accident and then being told I'd never walk again,
mm,
it felt like a death sentence to me at that time. And following the injury, I had to spend 8 weeks flat on my back
mm,
with a sandbag either side of my head. And during that time, like I was, it was definitely a deep period of mourning of all of the things that I saw that I would never be able to do again.
mm,
And so, I was angry that I was not going to be able to follow that dream of being a vet. I was upset that I was not going to, be able to play sports the way I
mm,
used to. And as a 12-year-old girl, I was thinking that boys would never be interested in me again.
mm,
And then having to go through, I spent 7 months in hospital,
mm,
and then had to, start school. Couldn't go to the school I was meant to go to that I worked so hard for. And so, those early teenage years were, pretty dark. And like a lot of teenagers, I sought some pretty unhealthy coping mechanisms. And
mm,
I spent a great deal of the years that followed drunk and stoned wherever I had the opportunity to.
mm,
And, now I look back at it and I see it was like, creating these moments of artificial happiness.
mhm,
And but what that led to in between was like the deeper sort of pits of despair and depression and anxiety, which I hid from other people.
mm,
And it was just in years gone by when I was sort of digging a little bit deeper into this with one of my mentors around, my keynote speaking at the time. And he said, look, you sort of just skip over these things. Like, it's like, oh, this happened. And then suddenly here we are 20, 30 years later. But when I really reflected deeply on those years, I realized that, while physically I drowned once,
mm,
emotionally I was drowning every single day and was just going through the motions and really didn't see the prospects of a future ahead of that time.
mm. Wow. So how long did it take you to start emerging from that?
Yeah, look, there was a few things that sort of happened along the way. One of the things that really helped me was music, and I didn't realize just how powerful that was until till the last 4 years when I couldn't go and see live music for a
Mm,
period of time. But it would have been probably, the starting point of it was around 16, and that's when I was like, okay, I'm not going to get stoned anymore.
mhm,
That feeling of fogginess was just, that was not a place I wanted to be.
mhm,
But it was just a very slow process. And then, sort of towards the end of my schooling, then I realized that I couldn't change what had happened,
mhm,
but I could change the story I told about what happened,
mm,
to myself mainly, and then to others. I didn't talk much at all to other people around,
mhm,
what had happened, but mainly that story I told myself, and also I realized I had complete control over what I did next.
right.
And so that was a huge shift.
Mhm,
And then into my early 20s, that ended up evolving into a deep sense of gratitude,
mm,
like a deep sense of gratitude for the accident, how it changed my life. And so many people go, how the heck can ending up a quadriplegic and needing a wheelchair for the rest of your life be positive?
mm,
But when people spend time with me, they realize that I am genuinely grateful for that and the opportunities that have presented. Like I've had the opportunity to do things in my life that I can say with absolute certainty I would never have had the opportunity to do had my life taken the path that I'd planned.
mm,
And so, there was a few points along that journey, but I think a lot of it comes down to a choice.
yes.
And, for me, it's like, am I going to let it ruin my life or am I going to let it make my life better?
Mm.
And some people go, it's not that simple, but it actually is.
Yeah, it is, but also your decision to be grateful. That
Yeah.
every day we decide to be grateful or ungrateful or neutral, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to say I'm so proud of you. I don't know you that well. I'm so
Thank you.
proud of you for not just coping, but making the best of it in a good way. And to say that you're grateful that it happened, that's astounding to hear. That, I mean, the word is astounding to me because, I think a lot of people have stuff happen and they make the best of it and like, well, it could have been worse, but you're actually grateful. So,
Yeah.
when did you start? What did you do after college then? What sort of jobs did you do that got you finally to being this resilience, a thought leader actually?
Yeah, it's interesting because I ended up, so I did my high schooling. I was one of these people that got into university and then deferred and never went.
Mm,
I was like, "Oh, I'll just take a year off and I'll get my driver's license and, do all that stuff and then I'll go." And then I got a job that I liked, and it was a like an admin job at a local engineering company, and so I was on the front desk and I did everything from purchasing to payroll and, straight in the deep end,
mm,
and it was great because it was so busy, and
mm,
so that just kept me, and I've been brought up to have a really strong work ethic.
mhm,
And so I was one of these people that was like, "Okay, what do you need?" I would get it done. I'm like, "So what's next?
mm.
What's next? Give me more, give me more, give me more." And then I ended up getting to the point where it was like, the internet was brand new then. It was like 1997 was my first job. And so then I just said to my boss, I said, "Look, if it's quiet, is it okay if I just go online and just start to learn stuff?" And I would go to the bookstores and I bought all these books like, The Complete Idiot's Guide to Microsoft Access and Excel and Learn SQL and Visual Basic in 7 days, like
Mhm,
all this sort of stuff. I was like such a nerd.
mhm,
And so, through that, I just learned so much about the business, and then over time, I ended up at the same company. I worked in a couple of different jobs there, but I ended up just sort of going from job to job. I didn't really find anything that really felt like it was for me.
mm.
Probably, I knew I was always here to make a difference. And, one of those places I tried to do that was in politics when I was in
Wow.
my 20s.
Mhm.
So I joined a political party. I actually ran for local government. I ran for state government, in the mid 2000s. And I learned a lot about resilience in that experience. When I was announced as a candidate, the local paper had a front page with a full page, like big picture of me with a headline that said impossible. It was just like, welcome to the campaign stays. So it was just all a whole series of different things that I did along the way. And they were like, project management, that sort of stuff. I never had any formal qualifications. I was just somebody that was self-taught. I learned on the job.
Mm,
But really, I didn't get even close to what I'm doing today as, as a resilience speaker and author and coach until it was in 2010, and I ended up at a conference in Adelaide where I was living at the time around spinal cord injury.
mm,
And it was at the welcome drinks that I saw this really interesting stand, and they had these really cool wheelchairs and stuff. And I struck up a conversation with them, and they told me about the work they did in developing countries.
mm,
And I thought, "Oh, this is really fascinating." And then the thing that really, I guess, really struck me to sort of go, "Look, I need to do more," was they told me that in a developing country, somebody like myself with an injury like mine, that 75% of people are dead within 2 years.
wow.
And I was like, "My gosh,"
Mm,
I was 21 years and I was in the best shape of my life.
mm,
And so I felt compelled that, okay, how can I help?
mm.
And they said to me, they said, "Well, we're doing a project in the Solomon Islands next year. Would you like to come as a mentor?"
Wow.
And I'm like, "I've never been overseas before, precious city girl, hated camping." And I said, "Well, look, can," like my partner at the time, I said, "Can he come with me?" And they go, "Sure." And so I ended up in the Solomon Islands for 2 weeks. Never, yes, I said, never traveled like that. No electricity, no hot water,
Mm,
mentoring people from very remote islands, and just some stuff that was simple to us,
mhm,
but actually had the potential to save their lives. And that was what really had me go, "I've got to make a big change."
mm,
And I went back into my office when I got back from that trip, and I'm like, "What the heck am I doing here?" Like, anyone with a bit of project management and accounting could do what I was
mm.
doing, but not anyone could do what I just did.
Wow.
And so then I chose a date a year in advance, and I'm like, "I've got to do something." And I was starting to get involved in personal development. And around that time, I had a mentor who said to me, because I wanted to talk about, that issue and raise awareness for that. And he said to me, he said, Stace, with a story like yours, if you don't share it, you're being selfish.
Mm.
I was like, whoa, how can I argue with that?
Mhm.
That was 2011. And 2012, I left the last job in employee land that I ever had.
Mhm.
I started my business, which has now evolved into the Academy of Resilience,
Mhm.
and haven't looked back.
Wow,
That's been the journey.
that is so touching. And you taking off to the Solomon Islands and all of that. What a story. So
Yeah.
definitely, I mean, just listening to you, this is definitely, I mean, for me, it just seems I'm getting goosebumps. Just so your purpose, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's amazing. And now you've written the book on resilience. When did that come out?
I initially I crowdfunded the book
Mhm.
too. So I again, mentors that always said sell it first, build it later.
Mhm.
And so I crowdfunded that in early 2014,
Mhm.
with the thinking that it would help me be accountable to get it done faster.
Mhm.
And I eventually published in 2015.
Mhm.
So, it's coming up to 10 years now.
Mhm.
And I just it was such a good process of the crowdfund and just the campaign around that. I did some publicity, but
Mm.
realized that it was the old fashioned person to
Yes.
person work the network hustle
Mhm.
is where it's at, isn't it? And
Yeah.
not, and I love, you have the approach of not paying for ads or
Mm.
anything like that. I didn't do any of that, and then built that, and the book, as for many people, it's opened a lot of doors,
Mm.
and not only from a positioning perspective,
Mhm.
but also too to when I keynote, I can package it up as
Yeah.
it just gives me different income sources as well.
Mm. Okay, so I mean, clearly you're the right person to speak about all this because nobody can look at you and say, "Well, my life is worse than hers." Because coming from you, that you can be resilient, it should just automatically shortcut things for people that are whinging about their lives when really their lives aren't that bad, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, you're grateful for where you are, and I mean, human beings complain about the smallest things, so it's must be a revolution when you're chatting, when you're talking about all this and sharing this. That it must really be very effective for people to say, "Well, if she can do it, so can I." Right?
And it's one of those things that I actually used to frame when I was speaking that, I'm not going to go and scream in anyone's face, what's your excuse?
Right. Yeah.
Because, shaming people has never worked
No.
into creating, change. But yeah, it does. And it also, what I feel has been really powerful as far as that goes is I can share my story and how I evolved
Mhm.
from that injury, and then what were the specific things that I've done to build my resilience. And then being able to tie it to a personal narrative, then it's something that really stays with people.
Mm.
And so that's been something that's been really powerful. And I get messages from people years later, and it's so interesting because everyone takes something different,
Mhm.
and it's one of those things. I think straight away, you see a picture of me. Okay, yep, I use a wheelchair, and you can automatically go, yeah, you must know something about resilience.
Mm.
And it's one of those things too, because I know a lot of people go, "Oh, look, there's always someone worse off," and things like that. And
Mhm.
I think it's all relative,
Mhm.
and I see resilience as a bit of a continuum as well. And there's times where we probably don't have as much. There's times where I've dropped something in the kitchen and cried. It's just like those little
Human.
things. Like we're human, as
Right.
much as it sucks to admit it
Right.
sometimes. But yeah, so just being able to share those really simple things, and I think the power of personal story,
Mhm.
and getting over that fear of talking about myself.
Mm.
And I said to that mentor, I said, I don't want to talk about myself because everyone's going to think I'm a total wanker for talking about myself.
Right.
But
No, they're not
that's the
thinking
thing,
that.
isn't it?
No, they're thinking, look at this woman that had this happen and she could be feeling sorry for herself for the rest of her life. And yet she's not. And I'm feeling sorry for myself because, my wife left me or whatever, right? I'm not talking about myself personally. I'm just using an example or whatever. I mean, something that happens. And I think it's very inspiring because I think all of us are like, oh, that's so bad that happened. Boo hoo. Really, it's nothing, right? It's really nothing compared to people. like you that have who have had huge challenges and are happy and grateful and helping people and saying that you're glad it happened. I mean, it's astounding, right? So what's one thing that you've found, and you've worked with a lot of people now, what is one thing that you find that people are doing that's keeping them from being resilient?
Yeah, look, a lot of it is around the stories,
Mm,
the stories that, that they tell themselves. And, I've heard, was it the belief structures, which is, they say it's all BS,
mhm,
that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think a lot of it is, is those stories, and a lot of it is around. And I think particularly because I do work with a lot of people that are in Australia, as I am,
mhm,
and in Australia, the tall poppy syndrome
mhm,
is huge.
mm. Can you explain that to people that don't know what that is? Because Australians know what it
Yeah.
is. Okay.
Yeah, and so and especially to people especially in America, they're like, "What? This thing actually exists?"
Yes.
So, it's like if you visualize like a field of poppies,
Hmm.
and the tall ones, as they get above the others, what happens is they try to pull them back, they chop
Hmm.
them down, try to
Hmm.
keep them back down
Hmm.
to the level where everyone else is or even lower.
Hmm.
And so it's a huge thing in Australia.
Yeah.
And we're not brought up to be proud to say that, we've done a good job,
Hmm.
any of that. And I think it's even stronger for women.
Hmm.
So, and I guess that, and then if you then couple that with the imposter syndrome, where
Mm.
people don't think that they're what they have is valuable or worthy or
Mhm,
interesting or
mhm,
any of that sort of stuff. So there's so much self-doubt, um, fears around self-worth, and then again, like as I said with my own experience, I thought everyone was going to think I was a total wanker,
mm,
and so I definitely see that type of stuff, that people are afraid
mhm,
to actually then put themselves out there, and also to, I think, you were saying earlier in our conversation about how society these days is really breeding weakness,
100%.
and I see that so
Mhm.
much. We grew up in a time where it was like basically fend for yourself,
Yeah, be
go out
be a
there, have a
woman, be
crack,
a man. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
you skin your knee, just dust yourself off and keep
Yeah, yeah,
going.
actually, it's the Australian, "She'll be right, mate." Oh,
Yeah, she'll be right,
I
mate.
just have this gash in my leg. She'll be right, mate. Just, put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah, yeah, and so what's happened is the pendulum has swung
Mm,
way too far to the other side, where particularly when we're talking about children, so for parents and schools and just society in general, is it swung to the other way where we need to build kids' self-esteem.
mm,
And that's when it become the everyone gets a trophy
mhm.
generation. We don't,
Yes.
you don't grade a report card, you don't
Mm,
score in sport. Every kid in the class has to get an invitation to the
yes.
other kid's birthday party, otherwise
Mhm,
you can't do it.
mhm,
And unfortunately, what that has bred is a complete lack of resilience,
mhm.
and it has also removed competitiveness. And the world is competitive.
Right. The world is competitive, and it's also removed a lot of personal responsibility
Oh yeah, yeah.
because
And responsibility is the first chapter in my book.
oh, there you go. I haven't
It's
read your book. I should read it.
everything.
But, so
It's
interesting that
everything.
you're talking about the tall poppies because I feel I grew up in Australia, but I'm from an American family, and that affected me. And, there's certain things about Australian culture I just don't even talk about. I mean, I don't live there anymore, and that's no accident. Okay. Because even in college there, I experienced that from the lecturers, from the professors chopping me down.
Wow.
It was like, how dare you think that you're as good as you think you are? I was pretty good, but they didn't like that. They hated that attitude. And I wasn't like full of myself, but I was just, doing my thing. And I experienced that from the actual educators. Okay.
Yeah,
So clearly I didn't feel like, gee, I don't feel that welcome in this country. But it's a problem. It has been a problem. And it's interesting that only Australians know what that means. Okay. So it's almost like a chip on the shoulder. Who do you think you are kind of thing? Who do you think you are to think you're better than all of us who are mediocre kind of thing? Right. So that's
it
that.
is. Yeah.
Right. Now, regarding the other thing with the lack of resilience, I do think social media has a lot to do with that of oh, it's not aligned, and how do you feel? And we're teaching people to give importance to every single thought that passes through our brains. Like it's so important. We have hundreds of thousands of thoughts, but we have to explore every single tiny thought. Not everything you think is important. Sorry. Here's
Well,
the
true.
newsflash, right? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing because and especially with kids, and I think because it's gone to that point where it's like, oh, we need to explore everything. No wonder there is just such an epidemic of diagnosis of mental health
Mm,
issues because you would actually lose your mind if you actually sat and
mm,
explored everything. I think it's important to feel things as they come up,
mhm,
but not try and tell a story about every little feeling.
mm,
It's like feel things because I think that's the biggest it was a mistake that I made
mhm,
was I just went next, next,
mhm,
next, 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 and so I didn't stop to actually process stuff.
mm,
And then I started writing my second book a few years ago, and I realized, wait, there's a lot of stuff here that I hadn't gone through.
mhm,
But when it's one of those things where there's so much importance
mm,
given to every thought and
mhm,
feeling, it's just ridiculous. Like you would just sit in a cave the whole day
mm.
if you
Processing.
did that.
Processing your brilliant
Yeah.
narcissistic thoughts. So, but no, I totally
Yeah.
agree
It's
though.
crazy.
We are from an era where it was like you just get along. You just get on with it and don't process it and don't really read too much into it. Clearly there's a fine line between processing your emotions quickly
Hmm.
right? Or when it's something that's big processing, or if it's something that's nothing, it's nothing. Just don't even process it. It's good. And I think that you're right. It's gone too far now. And I think that we are breeding just a society of narcissists. That's just my two bits. Shauna Moore says that everybody's a narcissist. That's going to be, okay. I'm not saying everybody's a narcissist, but I think we are encouraging that. And social media has a lot to do with that. Okay. Well, this has been super fascinating. And I'm having a great time listening to you. So, what's one thing that you would like to leave people with as far as like a mindset or a philosophy of everything that you stand for? What's something that you'd like to leave them with?
Yeah, look, I think there's I've sort of got to go one of two ways here. I think probably the most practical thing is coming back to the gratitude piece.
Mm,
And if I can share with people my approach to gratitude, because a lot of times people have heard, oh, okay, so keep a gratitude journal
mm-hmm,
and every day write down 3, 5, 10 things that you're grateful for. And
mm-hmm,
that's going to create this experience of gratitude. And it's something that didn't work for me.
mm,
I felt it was a bit wanky.
mm,
I felt that it became an obligation and a chore,
mm,
and it didn't create that sense of gratitude that the intention was there for.
mm,
So, what I did instead is just over a period of time of trying lots of different things, I came to find that a gratitude mantra was
mm,
something that worked best for me. And so, what I do is when I first wake up in the morning, the alarm goes off, hit stop, I take a moment before I get out of bed, I take a deep breath and I say to myself, thank you for the opportunity to be who I am, where I am, with what I have at this moment in time.
mm,
And a breath.
mm,
I do the same thing at night. So light goes out.
mhm,
Thank you for the opportunity to be who I am, where I am, with what I have at this moment in time.
mhm,
And during the day, if I have those moments where I'm sort of feeling a bit restless or off track or
mhm,
irritated or any of those things, I do the same thing. Few deep breaths, and I say that to myself. Takes 7 to 9 seconds, depending how
mhm,
fast you say it out loud, you write it, you do whatever. But what it does is it brings you back into the moment. And
mhm,
I feel if we are absolutely in the moment,
mhm,
it's impossible to feel depression or anxiety. Those things
mm,
are, past and future tense.
mhm,
And it creates that feeling of gratitude.
mhm,
We're not grateful for anything specific. We're just grateful for being here
mhm,
in this moment right now.
mm,
And so I found that that's been really powerful. And a lot of people that I've worked with have said that
mm,
that's been something that's made a huge difference for them. So, if people don't have a mantra for themselves,
mhm,
feel free to start with mine and
mm,
then evolve it into something that works for them.
mhm.
But yeah, I found that that's probably the simplest path, and gratitude is a huge part of resilience because you can't feel bad about something you're grateful for.
Mhm,
Gratitude is an energy of abundance, of possibility, of opportunity,
mhm,
and so it
mm.
just opens up everything. And
Yeah.
I just think it doesn't get much more simple than that.
No, and actually what you're doing, I'm grinning because you're actually having Thanksgiving every day.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's Thanksgiving every day, and it's sort of a prayer, actually. So, well, Stacey, you've been amazing. It's been a pleasure to have you on this show. Thank you so much. And to our listeners, I hope that you found this to be an amazing show, as I did. And please share, and please, give thanks and comment, and turn up on the next one. See you then. You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.